All right, everybody, continuing on with the negotiating and closing rules, picking up here with rule number 27. Listen and get information 66% of the time. Give information only 33% of the time. In other words, listen twice as much as you speak. While you're listening, look for gestures, body language, and grooming that indicate low self-esteem and lack of confidence. Also, look and listen for clues as to whether the other side is competitive or cooperative. So, again, going back to that idea of paying attention to your client. Listen for what they're saying. Listen for what they're not saying. Listen to what their emotions and gestures and body movements and their temperament, what all those things are telling you. You're doing listening on all of these different fronts. Rule 28, get the other side to state what they want at the beginning. And you tell them what your issues are in order to put the most relevant issues on the table. So that makes it so that you're not having to guess throughout the negotiating process what it is they're really looking for. Get them to share that early on. When the other side tells you what it wants, make sure that you repeat those requests or demands, whatever they are, and get agreement from them that you've listened to them, you understand, and so there's comprehension. Now, there might be some terms and conditions that are so vital to you that they're deal breakers. In these situations, it's important to tell the other side what issues are important to you as well. It's not a bad thing for you to share early on. These things have to be in place. These things have to be done a certain way. Now, you don't want to have too many of those deal breakers because you want to have some room for negotiating and for some give and take. But if there's something where they're asking for one particular thing and you absolutely cannot give that to them, then you need to be upfront about that. When sharing those deal breakers, include, in addition to the important terms, some throwaway terms that you can use as concessions later on in the negotiation. Now, it sounds like you're kind of being a bit dishonest here, but the thing of this is, if you don't have throwaway deal terms and corresponding price concessions, you wind up showing to be inflexible, and then your terms wind up being seen as unreasonable, and you could wind up just throwing the whole negotiation process away. So if you have some things that you share that are deal breakers that really aren't, and then as you go through the negotiation process, you're willing to walk those things back, it makes it seem like you're a little more flexible. Don't be afraid to start negotiations over if the other side introduces additional requests or demands onto the table later in the negotiation process. So if you agree to a certain set of terms, and then they say, well, I actually wanted more of this, or in addition to these three things that we said, we need to add this fourth thing, then that's introducing something new. That's not negotiating in good faith, and it is grounds for you to start again from the beginning, especially if it's a major thing that winds up just creating an unfair advantage on one side or the other in terms of what people are getting, what people are giving, and all of that. So, don't completely walk away from the negotiation, but you may need to start from scratch. Rule 29, open first to set an anchor, except when you do not know anything about the other side. It's good for you to take the lead and to put that opening offer out there. You never know. They might just take the first offer. Yeah, that's not inconceivable. So take the first step. Rule 30, when in doubt, open optimistically and have room to calm down. Now, when we say optimistically here, talking about sharing expectations on a rather high level. And this kind of goes into Rule 31. You never get anything you don't ask for. So ask for more than you hope to get. A good rule of thumb is try to get 15% above your HLE price. That gives you room to give concessions, still having the potential for getting your HLE. And then if you have to, you can even come down on price as the negotiations go along. If you also include at least 3 throwaway items in your initial offer, this also gives you some room for negotiation and for showing certain concessions, which can be very effective. Rule 32. When you know the buyer well, you're going to actually want to open realistically. You don't want to try to inflate things. You don't want to try to go for the gold. Just be quite open and honest and let them know what it is that you're looking for. I mean, you guys have developed a relationship. You kind of know each other already, so just be open and honest with what you're looking for. Also, you want to open realistically when you have no leverage, when you're in a tacit coordination situation, and when people say that they will not negotiate, and they mean that they will not negotiate. So in that sort of case, if they come to you and say, this is what I want, it's my way or the highway, well, then you need to come out with what your realistic terms are and say, well, this is what I can do. And then it's on them to bend from their non-negotiable items. Rule 33, get the bad news out of the way early. People prefer to have undesirable events come first so that they can avoid the dread, and to have desirable events come at the end of a sequence, and that way that they can enjoy those things. We like to end on positive notes, kind of look at the bright side of everything, if you will. So start with the things that they may see as negative and work your way towards the positive. Rule 34, don't include most of the other side's requests in your initial offer. You want the other side to ask for them so that you can bargain and ask for something in return for each request. What that does is it gives you more room to seem flexible and to be able to make concessions and say, okay, we'll give you this particular thing that you asked for. And it shows that you're willing, as you go through the process, to be able to give in on some things. Again, that's part of that idea of making them feel like they're getting a win on something. Rule 35, always frame all of your offers appropriately. When you open, frame your initial offer positively. Positive framing provides the other side with justifications for making concessions. So in this case here, what you're doing is you're trying to give things the best possible light that you can and really convince them that they're getting some really good benefits and features. And with that, they may be willing to say, okay, so this one thing that I thought was a requirement maybe isn't that important, and we can let that go. Rule 36, confidence is everything. Whoever blinks first loses. So the best way to signal leverage is to show and maintain a high level of confidence. So you really don't want to show at any point while you're negotiating that you're showing any sort of fear. You don't want to show that you think you might be losing the negotiation or that you have to somehow hurry up and close on the deal or you're not going to get the deal at all. You want to avoid those sort of things. You want to go in with this sense that you know what you're talking about. You know the things that you have to offer are good deals, and you stand behind those things that you're talking about. Some tips on signaling leverage are in the textbook. Feel free to take a look at those. Rule 37, never begin with a major concession. It's acceptable to give the first concession, but make that first concession a small one, a rather unimportant one. Because, again, that might be enough for them. And it gives you more power to be able to give other concessions later on if there's certain aspects of the negotiation process that wind up getting stalled. When you have bigger things to be able to concede on and still have some breathing room, it gives you a better advantage in succeeding in the deal. Rule 38, don't just concede, try to trade. If you give up something, always try to get something in return. If they ask for better timing of spots, for example, maybe you were offering a package where spots could run anytime during the broadcast day, but then they say, well, I don't really want spots running in the evening. Give me more spots in afternoon drive, or give me more spots in morning drive. You could concede on that, but maybe you gave them a break on the price and tell them, well, we have to get a little closer to the rate card, for example. So keep those sorts of things in mind. Don't just continually give things up. Try to engage in a little give and take from both sides. Rule number 40, make small concessions and give them slowly. It's a proverb that says, what we obtain too cheaply, we esteem lightly. In other words, the things that don't cost us a lot, we don't place a lot of value on. So use an effective concession pattern in which you've planned in advance in order to kind of build up to that point that, if you have to use all the things that you can use concession on, you don't use up all your cards in one hand. In order that perhaps they'll give up some concessions, or they will agree to some of your terms before you wind up playing all the cards that you have. Rule 41, make the other side work hard for everything. They'll appreciate it more. That kind of goes back to that proverb, what we obtain too cheaply, we esteem lightly. We also appreciate the things that we work hard for, that we fight for in a certain way. And when they win that, it's like they've made a certain achievement, and that they've gotten the prize for what it is that they've fought for. Rule 42, develop an effective concession pattern that signals when you get close to your walkaway. So as you give certain concessions, you may also want to say, all right, well, I'll do this and do this. That's kind of the extent of what I can do, in order to get them to realize that you are extending to a certain extent, and if you go any further, then it doesn't become beneficial for you to be able to close on the deal. Rule 43, summarize agreements and restate the other side's position on a regular basis. If they understand you're hearing what they're saying, it will reduce stress levels. People want to know that they're being heard and they're being understood. So summarizing, restating, making sure that you're both talking the same language and understand each other is especially important in any sort of conversation, but in negotiations in particular. Rule 44, be patient. With patience and hard work in exploring alternatives, you can make the deal better for both sides. Now, maybe by the point that you get to in the negotiation process, you get to where you've put off some major issues. Put off some major issues is what he's trying to say. And you did that early in the bargaining process. It might be time to come back to those things after you've reached a number of smaller agreements. You'll find that larger issues are easier to settle after smaller agreements have been reached. And the other side's commitment becomes at its height in that you've gotten a lot of yeses. So for them to say yes, 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 even on smaller things, but then when you get to the final thing, it becomes a little harder for them to justify a no, at least in a psychological sense. So work small and build your way up when it comes to taking care of certain disagreements. At this point, we're going to pause, and in the final video, we're going to focus more on the closing aspect of negotiations. So I'll catch you over on part C of Chapter 13.